Hi, my name is Heather Mitchell. Today I'm going to show you how to create an Adobe ad using Photoshop. So let's get started here in Photoshop. We're going to go over to File, New. I've already created a 1080 by 1080 size that's for the web. This can really be any size you want. I already know that I'm going to use it on Twitter, so I've got a cheat sheet that was here online that shows me the standard sizes, and so I'm going to go ahead and use this size. I'm going back to Photoshop and create. Okay, so I already have an idea how I want my ad to look. I'm going to come under File, Place Linked, and bring in the files that I'm going to work with. I'm going to use this girl here, and to place her I'm going to go ahead and hit Enter. But as you see, she came in with a gray background. It's just really slight. If I make sure I've got my wand tool, I've got a very low tolerance set at 1. I can select that background and use the keyboard button Delete. But now I see that it's a smart object, so I can't directly edit it. I'm going to say OK. Make sure that my layer is selected and go Layer, Smart Objects, Edit Contents. And what Photoshop has done is created this image and a new document. So what I'm going to do is just grab this layer and drag it into my file. Just kind of hover over my original document and I can drop it into here. So I've got this old one I can get rid of. And now my file is editable. And so now if I click on the gray section and hit delete, I can remove that gray background. It's not automatically going to grab all those colors. I want to leave a little bit of some of these darker areas for shadows and make it a little bit interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and leave some of those areas. She is a little bit big, so I'm going to shrink her using my keyboard commands, Control T. That's to transform the size. If I just grab my corner, I can reshape her, resize her. I'm going to use my Shift button, hold that down so that I make sure I retain the perspective of her. So I'm going to shrink her a little bit. I might play with this a little bit later. And when I'm about ready, hit the Enter button. And there she is. I've taken the liberty of looking up online and seeing how Adobe creates their ads. And I see they've often got a bar here that the text sits on top of that extends all the way to both ends. And they've got a logo up here at the top. So I'm going to kind of mimic this visual. And I've already downloaded my Adobe logo into my folder. I'm going to go back to Photoshop and bring in my Adobe logo, place linked. And of course it comes in way too big because it's an SVG file. Again, I can just hold down my Shift button and shrink that to the size I think is appropriate. I'm going to go ahead now and make that banner that we saw in the other ad by using my rectangular marquee tool. I'm going to select that. You see there's a drop-down arrow. If I click there, I've got different options, different shapes. I'm going to stick with the rectangular one, and I'm going to make my banner across about so. I'm going to make sure I'm on a new layer also. So over here in my layers panel, I'm going to make sure that this selection is on its own layer because I'm going to fill this. Swap out these two colors, and my top color is the active color. Use my paint bucket tool, and I'm going to fill that with red. Now my layer of the red rectangle is independent of the logo. I can hit Control D to deselect that. Now I can move this around if I choose to, but I think it's about good. I'm going to add some text now. Grabbing my T for my text tool, I see that red is the current color. I'm going to go up here and choose white and create my text block on top here. And I'm going to type in, got my cap lock on. Now my text block isn't large enough, so I ended up typing below here. And it looks like I did an extra space because I couldn't see what I was doing. This is centered. I don't want it centered. I'm going to go up here after I've selected it. I'm going to move this in just slightly, and I'm going to eyeball this. I don't have to do it on both the right and left side, but I just do make sure I've spelled everything correctly. And I'm going to add another text block. This text block I want to be red. And I think this is the red I'm using. It's a little bit darker. Don't be a scatterbrain. For this one, I'm going to definitely center this. So in this case, I can use this and bring it down. I think it looks pretty good. Maybe she could come down to the corner a little bit. It would help reveal some more of this scatteredness. We've got our Adobe logo. And maybe I could bring this, grabbing this instead of the block. So what happens sometimes is by default, the top layer is going to be what's grabbed first. So in order to get this bottom layer, I can use my shift button and it will kind of jump to the next thing that's behind. Or in this case, I want to keep these two together, my text and my red block. So over in my layers panel, I'm going to select my text layer and my red block together using the shift key, and I'm going to go down to the bottom and hit the link button. So now they're both together and linked together, so I can move them as one unit. If I move them down a little bit, they look better. I think that's about it. I think it looks pretty good. So thanks for tuning in.